Second hour of the Jack Blood Show happening right now as we speak, live, No Agenda, Global Radio, Gitmo Nation. Welcome, my fellow thought criminals, enemies of the state. Gitmo Nation and Brad the Impaler, wherever you are. It's August 13th, 2012, Monday. We've got Michael Murphy with us live from Los Angeles. They are debuting, just coming up here at the end of the week. I think it's this weekend. We'll get that from Michael. But for the first time ever, why in the world are they spraying? I would have named it something a little more offensive. Why in the F are they spraying you? But Michael's very professional. They have the top whistleblowers, experts, technicians. They've got the New World Order in their own words talking about how they want to spray you and what they're going to be putting into it. And coincidentally enough, that's exactly what we're finding all around us. The stuff that they said they were going to spray us with someday is what's falling from the sky. Don't look up and ask why. Why in the world are they spraying, dropping now? Why in the world are they spraying.com to get more information? And it's Michael Murphy. Thank you for joining us this Monday morning.
Good morning, Jack. How are you? Thanks for having me on, and thanks for covering this issue. We're really excited about the release of the film. The first film was a groundbreaker. This is going to be literally a bombshell in waking people up. I'm very confident of that. The response has just been incredible, so we're excited.
Yeah. Did you see the recent story? Kay Bailout Hutchison, as I call her, in Texas. She's going away from the Senate now. She's retiring. This is her life's work, apparently. She wants funding for geoengineering. But they're not even calling it geoengineering anymore. They're calling it aerosol spraying, and I'm stuck here.
Well, they seem to be changing names. The first film, we brought the term out from chemtrails to geoengineering, so we combined chemtrails and geoengineering. Then they switched names. They switched it to climate remediation in what looks like an attempt to confuse people, and now aerosol spraying. But bottom line is this. The trails that we see in the sky, the aluminum, barium, and strontium, those without question are geoengineering programs, literally destroying our soils, toxifying every living thing on the planet. So we have a story, and we're holding them to it, and we're going to see great change. I'm very confident of that in the next couple of months. A lot of new info is coming out.
Yeah, let's share some of that. Obviously, you got to see the film. We can't have all the experts on in one show. We've done that periodically, Michael, with you guys. But let's share with people what the evidence is. Now, again, here is the headline: aerosol spraying to save the planet. That's what they're saying. Could pumping aerosols into the atmosphere stop global warming? And let me just cover this. LiveScience.com, heat waves, drought, storms, the extreme weather that has battered, now again, what came first, the chicken or the egg? This extreme weather that has battered much of the planet in the past few years, up through the heat wave cooking most of the United States this summer, has more scientists thinking about extreme solutions to the climate crisis. Geoengineering, making large-scale changes to the environment, is no longer fringe science, with the debate shifting from whether it should be done and how. One controversial idea gaining traction among scientists is injecting small particles known as aerosols into the stratosphere to block the sun's radiation. Aerosols reflect solar radiation back into space, lowering Earth's surface temperatures. They can also provide, quote-unquote, seeds around which water droplets coalesce to form clouds, thus further increasing the planet's reflectivity. The particles are fairly long-lived in the stratosphere, a stable region of the atmosphere that begins 5 to 6 miles up. This makes the idea of aerosols' use as a worldwide planet cooler fairly attractive. The effects of aerosol injections are at least somewhat known, since volcanic eruptions produce aerosols naturally and have produced cooling in the past, and they go on to give a few examples of this. Skeptics of the idea, however, say it's one thing when a volcano erupts. Imitating nature would be another thing entirely. In other words, playing God could be very dangerous. A miscalculation in the injections could be a costly mistake, ushering in a new ice age. But the thing is that they don't tell you about this is that they've been doing it for years and years and years. They've learned from some of their mistakes. They probably have made a few mistakes in the past. And that if you can control the weather, you can control people's food, you can control their local economy, you can wipe out entire continents or countries, and pretty much reap the benefits, reap the whirlwind, literally, in this case. So, Michael Murphy, why in the world are they spraying? And let's drop I want people to understand when they look at this story the evidence that they've already been spraying and that this whole thing is a setup.
It's a complete setup. And, well, the first film we covered specifically what they were spraying. And again, if we go back to the geoengineers conferences, they're stating aluminum would be a primary ingredient, aluminum oxide, which, by the way, is very toxic to both human health and extremely damaging to our environment and to our soils. But we'll get into that hopefully during the discussion. But again, since we released the first film, people from around the world have been testing rain. Rain's a very good indicator of atmospheric contamination, and what they're finding around the world is this chemtrail geoengineering footprint of aluminum, barium, and strontium. These metals match several patents, geoengineering patents, which have been designed to specifically spray these metals out of airplanes. They match what geoengineers deny they're doing, but state that they urgently want to do. Now, geoengineers are calling for emergency geoengineering to start in the year 2013. That's next year. And what we see in the sky in terms of these long trails that do not dissipate, they actually spread out, they block the sun, is a stated goal of geoengineers. There's a new issue. Well, it's not new, but it's come out. It's the issue of global dimming. We now have 20% less sunlight reaching the Earth than we did just several decades ago. And of course, that's a planned goal of geoengineers as well. But they deny that they're doing this. And of course, geoengineers state that aluminum would be an effective aerosol to spray in our sky because it's very light and it's reflective. What we have found is that
as well as being highly toxic, yeah.
Highly toxic to everything, and hopefully we'll get into that. But we found studies that indicate spraying aerosols into our sky will temporarily, regionally create cooling, and you'll notice, like on a nice warm day when the airplanes come over, they start spraying, the temperature drops about 7 to 10 degrees. However, at night, the aerosols act as a blanket, they trap heat, and they warm the planet. So we've had an incredible increase in nighttime highs in the past 10 to 15 years when they really ramped up these programs. And again, NASA studies, not that I really trust NASA, but a number of university studies actually indicate, yes, spraying aerosols into our sky will warm the planet. So what is the true agenda? And there are a number of agendas and objectives that can be achieved by the use and through the use of putting aerosols into our sky. Weather control seems to be the number one agenda, and we met with former 20-year weatherman Scott Stevens. He's been studying this issue for probably about 7 to 10 years and become very well versed in this. And what he noticed and what we have noticed ahead of storms, about 24 to 72 hours, you'll see this intense spraying, real heavy aerosol canopy ahead of that, and then eventually a storm will come in. And if we look back to what we're finding in the rain and what geoengineers state they want to spray into the sky and are spraying into the sky, it's aluminum. And aluminum's a very effective conductor in our sky. So we met with Mark McCandlish. He used to work as a defense contractor, well aware of these programs, and also Dr. Nick Begich, who we interviewed for Why in the World. You can see the trailer at whyintheworldotherspraying.com. But anyways, after they spray these aerosols into the sky, in terms of how these programs manipulate our weather, the science is very simple. So we have this canopy of aluminum, other heavy metals, which are a conductor. Through the use of HAARP and other technologies, they can literally heat up this canopy, and in that heating, it creates a rise in the atmosphere. And when the atmosphere rises, it creates a low-pressure system, and it enables these corporations to literally steer storms into certain regions, or in the case of this summer, which we have now, out of certain regions. In this summer, there's no question about it. This is an engineered drought. One of the consequences of geoengineering programs, and geoengineers are very open about this, is the fact that their programs will create drought. And you had mentioned earlier, they're blaming all this weird weather on global warming. A fact is, for every degree that the planet warms, we should expect 7% more precipitation. Well, guess what? We are now in most of the world is in global drought. And again, that's a consequence of geoengineering programs. And that brings me to the other part of the science and how they're manipulating and modifying our weather. Because these particulates act as what's called cloud condensation nuclei. After they're sprayed, Instead of water molecules, normally how a cloud is formed and how rain is produced, water droplets will and moisture will combine together. They will condense and eventually fall as rain. When the aerosol particulates are introduced into the sky, instead of condensing, the water molecules condensing on each other, they will condense on this metal particulate, and it will not rain. These particles actually drift. One of the main reasons why we're having severe drought here in California is because they do a lot of heavy spraying right over California. The rain that should be falling here and on the west does not. It actually drifts into the Midwest, and it eventually has to fall, and it does. And as a result, we have this intense flooding not only in the Midwest but in the East Coast. But what they're doing this summer, Jack, I just got back from a 3-week trip to Chicago, and of course we're having severe drought, and we'll get into the reasons why they're creating this drought. But I was watching, and I've spoken to Scott Stevens many times about how they're using the aerosol. So we'd watch these beautiful cumulus thunderheads starting to form, and rain would be in the forecast. And then before it rained, we'd see the planes back and forth, literally seeding the clouds. And within 45 minutes to an hour, the storm would completely fall apart. It would almost look like smoke. It wouldn't be this big, beautiful, puffy cloud, and that moisture would drift, and the rain is not falling. There's no question about it. Through the use of these technologies and different aerosols, they can literally build storms, depending on what type of particulate they spray in the atmosphere, or they can collapse a storm like we just described in the Midwest, creating droughts in certain areas and other regions. So there are a number of reasons why corporations, governments are interested in this technology. There's no question the debate's over whether it's happening. This is happening.
Yeah, once you understand that if you create, I think it's a high-pressure system over a geographical area, that it will sit there and push the weather everywhere else and keep you in a drought. I mean, so once you understand that that's what happens and that's what's working naturally, you can replicate that if you have the technology and the know-how. This is where I think we are. But, of course, this all supposes that global warming, as they call it, is man-made. I got to tell you, I'm here in Georgia, and they call it Hotlanta. It ain't hot, okay? It's not hot, and it's raining constantly here, almost every day. Before we left Texas, it was the same thing. It was a cooler summer. It was raining a lot. There was no more drought, at least when we were there. It was unbelievable. It was real storms with real thunderclouds coming in, and they were just letting it happen. And all of a sudden, I guess after they bought all the property, which is where I think you might go, or hedged on certain futures in the stock market, they decided, okay, time to let it rain. So when I hear that, oh, it's so hot, and oh my God, we're burning up, we're catching on fire, I'm going, wait a minute, I'm in the hot. First of all, it's supposed to be hot in Texas in the summer, as you know, and it's supposed to be hot in Atlanta, but it really isn't. So if it's a little hot somewhere else in the north, or I know, like I'm looking at Seattle because I grew up there, it's perfect there. The weather seems pretty normal the way it was, 10, 20, 30 years ago when I was a kid. I'm not really seeing the global warming. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too much of a skeptic. I should just, if some scientist somewhere says we're warmer, I should just believe it, right? And this gets into this whole aspect of if CO2 is people, where does the science come from? Who funds the science? Remember science, folks? They said the earth was flat. I mean, they've been wrong before, okay? But who funds this? Who gives the research grants? And then we go right up to the usual suspects. In fact, as I was trying to say on another show here in a global warming debate about 2 weeks ago, Michael, the same people that are funding, that are behind this whole global warming, climate change, fear-mongering, are the same people that are doing all the polluting and the oil companies. The same money is coming and going into this so that they can control the debate. So we have to suppose here that it is global warming when we don't even know if it is man-made global warming, but that's the excuse. Again, just like bailing out Wall Street. We talked about that in the first hour. We're all going to die. We're all going to be broke. The banks are all going to go belly up. You're going to lose your savings, your pensions, and everything else if you don't give us all your money to bail out Wall Street now, using fear to control you.
Yeah, absolutely using fear. In the global warming debate is still out. In my response to that is this: no matter what side of that debate you're on, I think that we can all agree that these programs have nothing to do with cooling the planet. and that we all want these programs to stop. Because as we proved in Why in the World Are They Spraying, these programs are about the consolidation of enormous amount of monetary and political power into the hands of a few at the expense, literally, of every living thing on the planet. So, yeah, they want us debating, they want us arguing with each other. We have an issue now that affects each and every living thing on the planet. This is the first issue that we are able, as humanity, to unite. So, while it's a great problem that we have, I mean, we literally have a crisis on our hands, we also have a great opportunity, again, to come together to address this, to take back the power that we have given over to these criminals and restore our planet. And that's what's happening. The movement is growing, and we're going to do it, Jack. And thanks to people like you and some of the other people who have stepped up to address this to a larger audience, we're making a ton of progress. It's very exciting.
Stay tuned on the show because Michael will be with us for the hour. If you guys got questions, you can email them to me at jackblood@hotmail.com, jackblood@hotmail.com. If you go to our website at deadlinelive.info, you click on the banner, you'll see a banner for the movie trail. You'll get to see the trailer and everything. WhatInTheWorldAreTheySpraying.com. You can find where all the events are going to be and how to pre-order the film. And I really hope you guys get this and share it with everybody you know, because this is not conspiracy theory stuff. This is scientific evidence, whistleblowers, scientists refuting this claim that this stuff doesn't exist or doesn't exist yet. Let me go to this, Michael Murphy. They say that what they're talking about here in the article that we put at DeadlineLive.info and I talked about on the Corbett Report last week, they say that they're talking about stratospheric aerosol injection, like 5-6 miles up. And by the way, there have been papers on that could lead to massive droughts in Africa and Asia, deplete the ozone layer, stop ocean acidification. I mean, these things aren't good, but that's just the side effect on that, and we have to do it or we're all going to die. But what's the difference between stratospheric aerosol injections and what we're seeing with the X's in the sky, the grids, so-called chemtrails, aerosol spraying, which seems to be much closer to Earth?
Well, I believe it's the same thing. And again, going back to the geoengineering conference where we got some incredible footage, this is what they're calling it. They're calling it climate remediation, stratospheric aerosol geoengineering. But now we're seeing some of these trails at 10,000 feet. We're seeing them right above clouds. Obviously, they're cloud seeding. And some of the big X's that we've seen in the sky, and there are a number of reasons for the trails. Scott Stevens, when he was working as a weatherman, he started using time-lapse videos. So he would capture what is happening in the sky on a daily basis. What he noticed in the long trails, he noticed where there were discontinuities in those trails, or little breaks in the trails, which would be an indication that there was some type of atmospheric pressure change. He would notice another plane would come by and put an X right at that discontinuity. So he believes that some of the reasons for the aerosols, obviously they want to put chemicals into our sky, but some of it was to mark the sky, and then in doing so, they would know where to pulse using either the HAARP system or scalar weaponry to create a different pressure change, and then modify their weather according to what their objectives were.
X marks the spot. I've never heard you say that on this show, Michael. I think that's really provocative, and it kind of does make sense. X marks the spot. Spray here. Start spraying here and over here.
Spray here or mark, your certain energy there. And it's now all of this is coming to light, and people who are saying weather control. And when I first heard about weather control, I said, why would somebody want to control the weather? Well, if we look back into history, militaries have been interested in this technology for a number of years. And there was a project called Project Popeye, which I know you're familiar with, Jack, that was used in the Vietnam War, where the U.S. government actually flooded out the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and I think it was something like 13 feet of rain in less than an hour. So there's a military document owning the weather by 2025, and that's an express goal of our military, and it gives militaries a certain advantage in leverage over another military. So if you can create a condition in the battlefield where there's intense hail, intense storms, where the enemy literally is not able to get their planes off the ground, then you can create an advantage. And I remember back in the Iraq War, and I'm not sure if it was the first or the second one, but I remember this intense sandstorms that was really debilitating the Iraqi government. And I remember somebody told me, God is really on the side of the U.S. government because he's really creating all this adverse weather. for the Iraqis. So the U.S. must be doing something really, really good over there. And I kind of bought into it at the time. But looking back, hindsight is 2020. But what really blew my mind in this investigation was the derivatives, the weather being traded as a derivative in the financial interest and the financial gains, literally billions of dollars that can be made annually just by certain individuals and corporations by their involvement in controlling the weather. So that really blew my mind.
Well, why don't you go into that? And you asked the question earlier, and you wanted to get back to this. Why engineer a drought? Who benefits from controlling the weather? You mentioned, you're correctly so, that you can hedge. If you know it's coming ahead of time, you can do some insider trading with this. And if you know it's coming ahead of time when nobody wants to buy a certain plot of land because it's a drought-ridden Dust Bowl area and you know it's going to be pouring down rain and fertile next year, you know you can go in and take that over. If certainly we've given them enough money out of our own pockets with these bailouts to do it. Also, of course, it's a war machine. It's a way to put down your enemy, and it's something that DARPA could be involved in. But let's just talk about who benefits financially from controlling the weather and droughts. And you have that in your film, and there's a ton of information. I love how you guys did this. But repeat some of that for my audience, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. It blew my mind. In researching this, I came across an article, weather being traded as a derivative. And I looked into this, and sure enough, weather is being traded on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So I got on the phone, I started making phone calls, and I contacted a trader from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and we flew out to Chicago, and I learned some really interesting things. And he stated, he was telling us about weather derivatives and how certain corporations would, like you said, use these derivatives to hedge the risk on certain weather events. And the example he gave was somebody in the Midwest who had $5 million worth of seed in a crop, and they use these derivatives to essentially insure those seeds. And they can insure those seeds for $10 million. And if they have a summer like they do this summer, they literally make more money when a crop fails than when the crop grows. And most people think that essentially weather is not predictable in the long term. That couldn't be further from the truth. And I'm not saying that every person who's involved in these derivatives is in the know and is behind weather control and is a bad person, but without question, people who are involved with these multinational corporations and are collaborating with the corporations, which we know there's this elite club that we're not in, those people have the playbook, and they literally cannot lose. So again, we see corn prices that are expected to rise over 50% this summer.
Everything is corn. Genetically modified corn. Everything is corn. In fact, I've seen studies where something like 60% of our bodies are genetically modified corn now because everything is corn. Yeah.
Not mine. Not mine. And I don't plan it to be.
But if you control the corn commodity, then you control almost everything now.
Everything. Corn feeds most of the world from our Midwest, and it's failing. So those people who invested in that commodity and other commodities, which are now failing, are making literally billions of dollars. Every commodity is driven by weather. So having that edge, being able to predict weather on a long term, gives mechanisms for individuals, again, to make billions of dollars annually just by playing with weather derivatives on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. But what we really found out, and a big concern of ours, we interviewed Barb Peterson of Farm Wars, and we went up to Oregon. Drove up there, long drive through the desert, but it was an incredible interview. And she's been following the genetic modification in many different capacities, the health concerns that people have and the environmental concerns that people have. But I spoke to Barb on the phone, and again, when you produce a film, it's important to get all of your information and contact as many people as you can. And Barb told me about a new genetically modified seed that Monsanto has. And if we look back to again, geoengineering, it literally destroys, in a couple of ways, our soils, because after they spray the aluminum, barium, strontium, and other heavy metals, they eventually get into our soil and sterilize our soil. And when I was in Maui, I actually interviewed a couple of farmers from there and spoke with many over the phone, and the same thing is happening to those who are growing organic foods. They're seeing a complete collapse of their ability to get yields the farmers that we interviewed had seen one had seen a 60% decline in their organic yields. The other had seen a 70% decline in the past 10 years, saw a direct correlation with the trails. But again, these trails fall into our soil. They do two things. They change the pH of acidic soil to alkaline, so plant life that requires an acidic soil will start to die, and that's exactly what we see. Our forests are collapsing around the world. But heavy metal stresses the soil. So we found, Barb found actually this Monsanto patent. They have a patent that addresses abiotic stress. Abiotic stress is everything that is created from chemtrail geoengineering programs. It's the contamination of heavy metals in the soil. It's too much rain, too much moisture, and too much fungus, fungal overgrowth. Geoengineering programs are known to proliferate fungal growth, so that can be very damaging to the soil. So as a result, farmers across the nation, and this summer our timing was incredible coming out with the film, because everything that we spoke about is happening in real time. So it's really going to help wake people up, thank God. But again, what's happening through the use of these programs, these corporations are making it impossible for people to live independent and grow natural organic seeds. So they're now forced to go into these new genetically modified abiotic stress-resistant seeds, and Monsanto has the seed for everything from apples to zucchini
and the patent
to EPA.
For those. Yeah, I mean, they patented the food. Okay, go ahead.
They patented the food. Now, EPA is stating in the next 30 years that we will have a 50% increase in collapse from abiotic stress. So we took a graph, actually Barb did, and there is a direct correlation between weather disasters and Monsanto sales. So there's no question that they're completely benefiting from this. And if we look back to how farmers traditionally have grown food since the beginning of time, they have taken their crops, grown their crops, and they were dependent on natural rain, natural seeds, and sunshine. And at the end of the season, they would take seeds from the crop that they produced and use those to plant in the next season. Many of the seeds that Monsanto now is offering are what's called terminator seeds. They don't reproduce. So the farmer has to go back year after year after year to Monsanto. It's literally a mechanism not only to corporatize every natural system, but to enslave the farmers. They're now, Jack, our forests are collapsing at a very alarming rate. And in our research, we found a company called Arbogen. Arbogen is a spinoff of Monsanto, and this has just blown my mind. They're genetically modifying forests.
And the forests absorb the CO2. Okay, now none of this makes any sense. They want to cut down on the CO2 to save us from global warming, yet there are these processes and then Agenda 21 and everything, eliminating the forest, taking over the forest, which of course results in an excess of CO2. That's at least how I understand the science. Yeah, it's funny because when you're talking about these crop reports, I instantly started thinking about Aaron Russo's film Trading Places, where they switched the crop report about the oranges and that they managed to beat these guys at their own game at Insider Trading Places with Eddie Murphy, a fantastic film by Aaron Russo. And he also, of course, Aaron's no longer with us, but he also did a fantastic movie called From Freedom to Fascism, which everybody should see. It's free online. Speaking of everybody should see, why in the world are they spraying? An investigation into one of the many agendas associated with chemtrail geoengineering programs and weather modification and control. You can order it now. The big premiere, August 18th, a 3-day conference and fundraiser in Los Angeles. That is Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails 2012. The address for that is www.cbclive2012.com. Why do people say W's anymore? It's just cbclive2012.com. cbclive2012.com. There's a poster contest. I want to talk about that with you when we come back. Speaking of X marks the spot, I've got some of that right here for all you guys. It's the Jack Blood Show. Michael Murphy is with us. We'll take a quick break and be right back after this. And with us is Michael Murphy. Michael Murphy is the great documentary filmmaker. Of course, What in the World Are They Spraying was a global phenomenon, went totally viral. The follow-up to that is Why in the World Are They Spraying? This has just got to do better. It's a better movie. It's more impact. The other movie was great, had a lot of opinions in it. I was in it. You know, I thought it was wonderful. G. Edward Griffin put his name on it, which I think was great. It kind of allowed people to start having the conversation. The follow-up is even better, much better, and they're even better experts. The evidence is actually right there for you, right in front of you. You can't deny it anymore. They're spraying you, but why? And that's what the movie's all about. WhyInTheWorldAreTheySpraying.com. Michael Murphy, one of the great filmmakers and producers of the film, with us from Los Angeles today. Normally he's living in Hawaii, which is where I want to go. That's one thing, Michael. I want to talk about your poster contest and this great film debut that you're having here this week. But in Maui, I remember you telling me about 6-8 months ago, I think it was, that the mayor of Maui was trying to do something to stop the spraying because it's killing the food, the vegetation, and the people, poisoning everybody in this wonderful paradise island of Maui. How's that going? Is it going to work out? Is there any progress being made there?
It's going very well. I just made a call yesterday, so I'm waiting to hear the progress. But the last report was it made it through 3 stages successfully, and now I believe that it goes to council to vote, but I have to verify that. And this is it's the Clean Sky Ordinance, so it was a very effective island. We did a lot of street campaigns, handed out thousands of DVDs of the first film, What in the World Are They Spraying? We've lifted, we're encouraging people who purchase Why in the World Are They Spraying to make copies and hand out for free, because it will be a very effective activism tool. But anyways, we hit the streets, did a lot of screenings, and had some backdoor meetings, with the local politicians there, all very concerned about it. So what we birthed was this Clean Sky Ordinance, which will effectively ban geoengineering programs without 2 things: without A, informed consent, which they will never get, and an environmental impact statement, which they will never get as well. And Jack, I'm not naive enough to think that the people behind these programs are saying, oh no, we can't spray around Maui, but this ordinance will do 2 things. It will be used to create awareness around the world, and being that geoengineers now, what looks like an offensive move, are moving very quickly to establish legislation to make these illegal programs legal by the year 2013. I'm hoping that counties around the world will establish these ordinances, so this can be used as a tool. In Suffolk County, which is in Long Island, they have established an ordinance, ran into a speed bump, but they're back and they're presenting this again to the council, and we think that will be established. So again, once we get these in place, the criminals behind these programs will have a very difficult time without experiencing a lot of legal ramifications.
Well, in order to stop spraying you, they have to first acknowledge that they're spraying you. I guess that's the hard part, and that's what your awareness campaign is all about. And I think it's worked fantastic. In fact, I've seen a lot more people, and I know there's still people out there, they're afraid to talk about this because this affects their credibility, et cetera, that they don't want to, they even know in their heart that it's happening, that we are being sprayed, and that they've been using aerosol as a spray agent at least for the last, I think, 80 years, not just for weather, but, we know that's what the Frank Olson murder was about at Fort Detrick, that he knew and had evidence and was involved in a spraying operation in France where they sprayed a little town with LSD to see what would happen to them. We've seen this happen in San Francisco. We've seen them spray agents. In fact, this is another excuse for spraying, which maybe you'll cover in your next film. If you didn't, I didn't see it in this one, so I'm thinking this could be good for the next film, Michael. Who in the world is spraying you? But they also say that this could be used for anti-terrorism. For instance, if, Osama bin Laden gets in a crop plane and sprays some kind of chemical warfare agent, which is made at Fort Detrick, by the way, made in a cave in Afghanistan somewhere, on the people, that they can come and use an anti-spraying device to neutralize that. So they've been experimenting with that and spraying towns. And in fact, there was one town, I believe, years ago I'm going to say Kansas, just off the top of my head, but y'all can look into it and correct me on that because we're flying by the seat of our pants as usual. But they had sprayed a town with this the chemical warfare agent, and had a lot of, eggs in it, and people had egg allergies, and they were freaking out and getting sick and massive allergic attacks from this, and they had to just fully acknowledge that they were doing it. So aerosol spraying is nothing new. There's a lot of excuses for it, and CBA, cost-benefit analysis, Michael, there's a lot of ways they can benefit. We've talked about only a few today.
That's right. And now geoengineers are openly stating with Bill Gates, who, by the way, is a heavy investor in geoengineering, which destroys our crops, he also is an investor in Monsanto. So do the math there. He's definitely benefiting. But they're now coming out stating that openly that they will be doing geoengineering and spraying these toxins into the skies above New Mexico. So I am hoping to create more awareness on this. And if I lived in New Mexico, or if I have the ability to get out and organize, we should surround the state capitol. There is no way that people should accept this. And it's a beta test. You know, it's to see what approach they need to take get the public accepting this. And looking back at the geoengineering tapes, I went through, about 14 hours worth of footage. I came across one of their breakout sessions, and it was called Public Perception. And geoengineers classified the public in 3 different areas. The first area was people that had no idea and had no desire to know about geoengineering. And they said, we're not concerned about those people because they'll accept our programs, they'll do what I tell them. The second classification of people were people that had some knowledge but could be easily persuaded. So they said, okay, there's a little bit of a concern, but with the right propaganda, they didn't use that word, but with the right education, we can get them to accept these programs. The third classification of people were those who did the research and were well aware of these programs. And they stated, this group of people are a concern to us because they are the most likely to protest.
Yeah, and so they have to get, this is the same with anything, crowd control, anti-war activists, any kind of activists. The whole thing reminds when we were talking about putting together ordinances to stop, the spraying over Maui. I forget the exact terminology used for that. Repeat that, please, because we can repeat that in other cities and towns as well. What was that again?
It's called the Clean Sky Ordinance.
The Clean Sky Ordinance. And do you have a copy of this paperwork or this documentation anywhere so that people can replicate that and use it as a prototype?
Absolutely. Go to MauiSkywatch.org and you'll see it. I think it's right on the front page. But again, it's called the Maui Clean Sky Ordinance at MauiSkywatch.org.
Yeah, okay. And we had put that on our site. I think people can find it there as well if you just put that in our search engine at deadlinelive.info, which really works very good. I'm surprised at how good that works, that search engine. But it reminds me of fluoride, getting fluoride out of our water. This is something the EPA is supposed to do, and they don't. And for however many decades, we were told you're crazy if you talk about it. It doesn't exist. Okay, it does exist. It's good for you, and it just, it helps your teeth and all the rest of it. And now all the reports are coming out. It's poison. It's toxic. Kids with more fluoride rather than less are reportedly now being tested with much lower IQs, which is exactly what we were saying, 10, 15 years ago on this show. And people are now going to their city council with kind of Clean Water Act legislation, proposed legislation, and it's actually been working in some cities and towns who have finally thrown up their hands and said, okay, we'll take the fluoride out of the water. You guys won't stop. Okay, all right, you win. So we do win sometimes, and this is a good prototype and a good model for the Clean Sky ordinances, though they had to acknowledge fluoride was in the water. They had to acknowledge that it is dangerous for you, and we're still at the point now where they're not acknowledging the spraying. They're not acknowledging that it's bad for us because they don't acknowledge it exists. So we have a bit of an uphill battle here, I would say, Michael, but we're on the right track. We're making progress.
We are, and millions of people were awakened. It's been estimated that over 10 million people have seen the first film, What in the World Are They Spraying? Based on the feedback and the reviews that we're getting, this is going to go into the mainstream. So we're expecting a much greater, larger audience, and we need to have it. And the reason is this, geoengineers are very open about the damaging effects if they started these programs. Ozone depletion, which you mentioned earlier in the program. We now have a huge ozone hole in the northern hemisphere. Many people now, including myself, when I go outside into the sun, I burn in about 45 minutes. 5 years ago, I could stay out for about 6 or 7 hours and not burn. So people are noticing that, and the protective layer that we have had or used to have is being shredded every time they're putting aerosols into our sky. Another consequence, geoengineers stated, our programs could disrupt the food supply of over 2 billion people. Guess what? We are having the food supply of roughly over 2 billion people being disrupted this summer as we speak, a direct result of geoengineering programs. Of course, the contamination of every living thing on the planet. Now people have started getting their blood tested, and while we're finding this geoengineering chemtrail footprint in rain tests from around the world. Now people are finding massive amounts in the blood. There was a group in Mojave County, Arizona. About 20-some people got their blood tested. Over 20 of them, or over 18 of them, something around that number, had levels of barium that were 1,000 times over the elevated amount. I mean, we're talking about massive amounts. Of course, the health implications are just devastating with this. We've had respiratory mortality go from number 8 down to number 3 in just the past 6 years. Aluminum-related illnesses, Alzheimer's, going through the roof around the world.
From the aluminum in the water and in the air and the stuff in the food. And then they've got a cure for that. It's just like, look, you're going to burn more because the ozone has been depleted. And they tell us, remember when they told you, don't use aerosols, it depletes the ozone. I don't, maybe people don't remember that. They had to start banning the hairspray and everything because they were blaming that on even though HAARP has been admittedly, they've done that. That's part of their project, is to scorch the ozone. But then, you burn more. So then you have to get sunscreen, and you have to buy Dow Chemical sunscreen or whatever. And then you find out after years of using that to prevent melanoma and skin cancer that, that's not only highly flammable and can catch you on fire, but it also creates cancer. You're slathering cancer poison right on you I mean, it just never ends, Michael, and it doesn't.
It never ends, and now we have these massive fires. Well, geoengineering creates stronger and more burning fires that are burning hotter, and the reason is this. Aluminum is an accelerant. So with the droughts, you have these dry forests, and then they're putting aluminum all over the trees, which if you've ever taken a flame to aluminum, it goes up like gasoline. And yes, it proliferates these fires that we're seeing. And I haven't looked into this, Jack, but this is something I keep on telling people I'm going to look into, and maybe I'll get to it today. My guess would be that the forests now that are being destroyed, I would venture to bet that Arbogen, that's the company that's genetically modifying forests, has contracts to replant. Yeah. And that's speculation at this point, but I bet you we begin to see that. And this is literally, it's a genetic modification of the world. And if you go to Hawaii with me, which I'm going to urge you to do, you got to get out there for a week. Man.
Okay.
You got to get out onto the farm. I know that we've been talking about that, but we live organically, and we're not 100%, but we're primarily dependent on the land. So we're dependent on natural seeds, natural sun, and, of course, rain. But through the death and destruction of these programs, these corporations literally usurp the authority of nature or the authority of God, and they bring it under corporate authority so that these entities can have this godlike power. They are after controlling everything on the planet. This is the takeover. We are the ones that have been called because religions have been talking about this this occurrence for thousands of years. It's been prophesied, and we are the ones that have been called to address it. This is literally the final battle between good and evil, and we are going to win because there are people waking up, there are people standing up, and we will not allow our planet to be molested anymore. It's time for restoration. It's time to bring the natural balance back, and it's happening.
Attaboy. Okay, tell us, I've only got technically about 5 minutes left, maybe a little bit less, and I want to get a couple of things in. So quickly tell us what's going to happen on August 18th, the premiere streaming live of Why in the World Are They Spraying? The Consciousness Beyond Chemtrails 2012 conference and fundraiser in Los Angeles, CBCLive2012.com. Tell us how this is going to go down. What's going to happen there?
Oh, it's an incredible event. It's the largest stand against chemtrails ever. We have Clifford Carnicom, in Sophia Smallstorm, incredible speakers who are going to be at this event from around the world. So we'll be covering greater depth than just weather control. There are a number of agendas associated with these programs. Roseanne Barr is going to be speaking before the premiere about activism. Of course, she's going to be a presidential candidate, or she's
running with our friend Cindy Sheehan. And by the way, I saw her roast last night. That was pretty good.
You saw her roast. Well, it's a good time because now she's in the spotlight. So
she's on board. She's on board with all of this. She gets this.
She's been supporting our work, the Why in the World Are They Spraying? Cynthia McKinney, we just got confirmation last night. Cynthia McKinney is going to be involved, so we're really excited about that. I mean, she's been a true patriot and a hero in many different capacities, so she will be coming out to speak about this issue as well. So we're just excited about it. And again, it's at the Ebell Theater. They've had a number of award ceremonies. It seats 1,200 people, but we expect, of course, thousands to see the film. So it's available. The entire event streaming online. You can get the film if you just want to see the film, but you can also see the entire event.
And we're gonna
go to our web.
We're going to stream that at DeadlineLive.info with your permission. Is that okay? So people can watch the 3-day event if they can't be there. But we want you guys to go and to tell everyone. Facebook this thing out like crazy. Get everyone you know in Los Angeles or that wants to go to Los Angeles on August 18th. Get them out there. Make sure we have a full, every seat is taken, that there's a lot of hubbub around this thing so that the media can't deny covering it. That's really important. And all the information you need, whyintheworldoftheyspring.com, or you can just click on the banner at DeadlineLive.info. But it's okay if we stream this at our website for the weekend here.
Yeah, I would say I'm not the person running it, but John White is, so you have my support of doing that, but okay. I would definitely contact John, but I don't think that he'll have a problem. I would love to see it streamed at Deadline Live.
We do that all the time for a lot of other people. I'd love to do it for you guys. But again, make this go viral, please. Pre-order the film, Why in the World Are They Spraying? Tell people about this big event, August 18th, a 3-day conference and fundraiser in Los Angeles, CBC Live 2012. And then quickly, before I let you go, you have a Why in the World Are They Spraying poster contest. That means people can create a poster and they could win. Tell us about that real quick.
Well, we had some incredible entries. We picked our winner actually on Tuesday. It was Cincinnati Skywatch, and it was a hilarious, they mixed humor in with their activism. But we have posters available, so people around the world are posting up Why in the World Are They Spraying posters to make people aware of this. And our goal is really to get thousands, if not 1 million people watching the premiere of this film. It's going to be very empowering, so we want it to go viral. So you can go to whyintheworldoftheyspring.com, download the poster, and please get it up into your community. I've had a blast. I've been going around my community here in Los Angeles, putting up posters, and it's a great opportunity. People start asking me, what is this? And so I start talking about the chemtrail issue. People are getting it, Jack.
Yeah, and you folks out there, you need to get this film, and it's not going to embarrass you. Give it to people, and make sure your city council members, your legislatures, maybe a lot of them are well-meaning and they've kind of fallen into this political trap, so to speak, and they don't know about this, and maybe they're open-minded enough, but you're never going to know unless you put it in front of them, and that is something you can do that will ease your conscience. You know you did something, and if it's completely futile, oh well, whatever, you tried. So get this film in the hands of the decision-makers out there, those that are paid to represent you, and make sure you're paying them, they work for you, and make sure they are aware of this. That at least, if nothing else, means they're not off the hook. They know about it, and then they didn't do anything about it. And then we're having your friend who also made a film about culling the water on. I'm hoping to have him on this week or next week, and that's also another huge part of what we're talking about here. Water, food, air. I mean, come on, man. Can we at least have that, if nothing else? Yeah.
Yeah, we're excited for the release of our film, and it's going to be it's a tool. I'm an activist, so every film that I make is geared towards that, and it is something that will be well accepted by those political leaders, those people in office.
Thanks for hanging out with me today, Michael Murphy. whyintheworldoftheyspraying.com. We'll stream that event. We got to go, folks. We'll be back tomorrow, and yes, we have a huge guest, huge guest for you tomorrow. I hope you tune in. I'm Jack Blood. This is the Jack Blood Show. No Agenda Global Radio and affiliates. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thanks a lot, Jack. Take care.
You've been listening to the Jack Blood Show, sponsored by you, our great listeners and supporters. Tune in tomorrow, same time, same channel, for the Jack Blood Show. And check out our information always as we publish it 24 hours a day at DeadlineLive.info. And stay bold. Mighty forces will come to your aid.